Welcome, everybody. This is our presentation of Can You Picture That? My name is Darren Guido. I'm a supervisor of instruction in the Cesar Rodney School District. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see my two favorite books. One of those is Fox and Socks. I remember reading that to my children as they were growing up and tried to get through that as quickly as I could. It's a tongue twister, so it was pretty funny stumbling over those words. And another of my favorite books, again, reading to my kids, is The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey. If you're familiar with the book, it is a tearjerker, and my kids knew as soon as I was going to choke up every single time in the book, because they would quit looking at the pictures and they would look at me, because that is the power that picture books have.
Awesome. I'm Brianne Pitts. I'm assistant professor of teaching, learning, and educational studies at Western Michigan University. And my two book selections I shared here include The Day I Swapped My Dad for a Goldfish, which is a Neil Gaiman story that my kiddos loved incredibly much when they were youngsters. And then The Five Chinese Brothers, which is a text that I loved all over the place. My dad used to read it to me almost every night. And I later found out as an adult that it has some pretty problematic content. So I put a little rewind symbol there, because we can always learn to critically analyze our favorite books and still use them in the classroom. So I'm excited to be here with you today.
Hello. I am Jennifer Pontius. I'm a classroom teacher. I teach 10th grade world history and 12th grade government in a big public high school just north of Seattle, Washington. I have also cried my way through The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey before, but the two books I chose to select here, the first one is a book that I was told was my favorite when I was a baby, called Babies. I think that just means it was my mom's favorite to read. And it's a super simple little board book by Gyo Fujikawa. And it's so cool because a couple of years ago, a picture book biography of Gyo Fujikawa came out that describes her life and her family's life in Japan and then in America. During World War II, her family was swept up in Japanese incarceration during World War II. And then it talks about her quest to publish a picture book with kids of all colors in the inside pages. So kind of cool.
And so we worked together over the past year or so to think about ways that we could include picture books in secondary classrooms. We may typically think of using picture books in elementary classrooms, maybe middle school, but we wanted to find a way to use those books in a high school classroom. And so we created a framework that you could see in the middle of the page, a 5-step framework. You can actually access that using that QR code that you see on the page as well. That'll take you to a website that has all this information on it. You'll notice there are 4 books highlighted on this page as well. Each of those 4 books, there's a little description about the book, but the other document that you'll find is a lesson plan in a way that you could utilize that book in your classroom. And we'll go through those books as we go through this presentation.
We also thought it's important to mention that these lesson plans and the book materials that we've created were reviewed by a number of individuals from diverse backgrounds in racial, ethnic, gender identity groups, so that we could get as many perspectives as possible in practice. As white educators, we wanted to make sure that we were being as fastidious as possible to bring in multiple perspectives. And we hope that those come through in the book reviews as well as lesson plans, with much gratitude to our collaborators. Thank you so much.
And so you'll notice the first step of the framework is meeting the collaborators. And the book that I worked with was The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander and Kadir Nelson. And so one way that you could do that is to answer these types of questions. Who wrote, or have your students answer these questions? Who wrote or illustrated the text? Why is the story important to them? Are there other perspectives on this topic? So maybe looking outside of just the authors, but what other perspectives are there about that. I've also found two different interviews. The one from ESPN's Anscape is a conversation with him and Kadir Nelson, Kwame Alexander and Kadir Nelson, talking about the book and how it was written. And then on the left-hand side, Kadir Nelson in an NPR All Things Considered interview talks about the book specifically and kind of his development as an illustrator, but then specifically about that text itself.
In framework step 2, we're going to invite our students to do a comprehension check and work with the book to deepen student understanding. So they may pick a significant line or explain the meaning. Here's some examples from 2 of our texts: Stonewall by Rob Sanders, which focuses on the building of Stonewall as the main character. So we want to ask students to examine why Rob Sanders might have used the building itself as the primary character and to use text evidence to support their claim. And then how this might support or deny multiple narratives or erase significant figures. In Fry Bread, we're going to ask students to examine Kevin Noble Millard's comments about fry bread being resistance in the end pages in paratext, which list a number of the federally recognized tribal nations in the United States. So lots of great things to examine.
And then step 3 is really digging into the illustrations, because that's what makes the picture book different from just a text of text. So thinking about specifically who or what is shown in the illustrations, who or what is missing from those illustrations. So really having students to think critically about what the words say, but then how are those words represented in the pictures themselves? Why do you think the illustrator created the images that way? And a couple, the one that I really want to highlight is there's a 3-page spread in the text that repeats the same sentence. This is for the unspeakable, and it shows it from the middle passage, the bombing of the church in Birmingham, and then the picture on the bottom right are young African Americans who were killed that we saw. So then it's really having students think about why the illustrator used those pictures, and then why the author repeated that sentence 3 different times.
In the 4th step, students will take their text and compare the sources with primary and secondary sources. They might ask questions about what was left out of the texts, what was added, what the picture book brings or gives that the primary or secondary source doesn't, and what method of sharing the information they prefer. So we have some options here from Fry Bread, where students can use resources such as nativeland.ca to examine place and think about the indigenous peoples who made the land their home before them. They can also take a look at the maps in an Indigenous people's history of the United States and compare those documents to the author's craft in Fry Bread. In Stonewall, they might take a look at history.com and some of the primary source images from Stonewall itself and compare those with the picture book text.
And then the last step of the framework is taking action or applying their learning. So it's not just taking in the information, but then we want students to be able to do something with that. So a couple of options that you'll see there: writing to the author or illustrator, asking questions, of having the students do an interview of some kind with the author or the illustrator. They can create a book trailer to highlight the text. They can hold Socratic seminars, contribute to a relevant Wikipedia page, or all types of ways that students can take action. And it's the important thing is that they are doing something beyond just taking in. So students might write a sequel to The Undefeated. And if they did, who would they include in their text? Or if they could interview one of the people that they saw, what types of questions would they ask any of the people that are highlighted? Or is there anybody that is missing from the text that they would want to see in the text?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks from the classroom perspective. I have used picture books in my classroom to begin the students' unit on the Haitian Revolution for a few years now. So here is how I use the framework in my class and how it works. So I always start off by reading my students Freedom Soup, and I tell them to curl up and get all comfy, and I'm going to read them a picture book, and my 16-year-olds do just fine with that. Sometimes I ask them the question, when do you guys think that little kids should learn that enslavers used to enslave people? How old do you think kids should be when they learn that? And they kind of like to talk about that before I read them the book. And then I said, this book is meant for 6 and 7-year-olds. Do you think it's presented in a good way? So that will, if students are reluctant to listen to a picture book, that question kind of gets them settled in. I read them this picture book, and then we engage with the framework. And the first part of the framework is to take a look at who created this picture book. So the author is Tammy Charles. I have my students go to her website, and then we watch this clip. It's from Good Day Philadelphia, and it's on New Year's because New Year's Day is the Haitian Independence Day, when many Haitian families make freedom soup. So she's on Good Day Philadelphia making freedom soup. And as she does that, she talks to the audience about why this book is important to her family. So I have my students watch that. Then step 2 is those comprehension questions. So I asked my students, what is the significance of freedom soup? And then where does the story take place? The story actually takes place in a big city. It kind of looks like New York City. So we take some guesses as to where it is. And then we talk about why that's important. And the story doesn't take place in Haiti. It takes place in New York. So those migration issues are going to come up. And then I ask my students this question. I tell them, or I remind them, that only 4 pages actually discuss the Haitian Revolution. How much hard history do you think that young students should learn about? They really like discussing and writing about that question. All right. And then we dig into illustration inquiries. And what I do in the classroom is I only have about 4 copies of Freedom Soup. So I have a whole bunch of picture books and primary resources. Hang on a second. I do actually step 3 and step 4 at the same time. Otherwise, just so I have enough resources, right? So when students are taking a look at the illustration inquiry, I have them just analyze 2 pictures. And here is one of my students, Ramiro, talking about this image right here.
All right, so what do we got here?
Well, it looks like the French mainly just has guns.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have swords, and I think they also spears.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have guns? Or is it just spears?
Looks like a couple people have guns. So definitely the French are better armed. What else?
Yeah. They're more in the open.
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming from the sea from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, the Haitians are running down the mountain, right?
yeah.
So who do you think has the advantage there?
The Haitians, right?
Yeah. So maybe the French have better weapons, but the Haitians, they know the land, right?
Mm-hmm. And plus, they can hide in the bushes and stuff.
Uh-huh. Cool. Write it down.
All right, so this kind of question gets my students prepared to learn about, the more historical details of the Haitian Revolution that we're going to spend the next couple of weeks learning about. All right, so at the same time, I also have several other books that my students are looking at. This is a young adult novel, Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, and about 2 pages of this novel are about the Haitian Revolution. The rest is a YA novel about this girl and her family and her love life. Good book if you want to read it. But I have my students read the 2 pages about the Haitian Revolution, and it's kind of written in this like snarky teenage voice. And always a couple of my students want to borrow this book once we're done with it as a class, which is another goal of mine. I also have my students read a book called The Common Wind, a page out of Avengers in the New World, and Sugar Changed the World, which we'll see in a second. So I have about 2 or 3 copies of all those books. So half my classroom is studying books, right? They're looking at Freedom Soup and all these other books, but I don't have enough books for all of my students. So the other half of the class are looking at those primary sources. And what I have is I have a bunch of images. I have about 15 images. You can access them on this link right here. And if you print them out in color, I also have dated all of the images. So students can take a look at the date and line up a timeline, what happened first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And that gives them a good overview of what happened in the Haitian Revolution. And then I have them write that timeline down. And I also have them analyze a couple pictures. All right, so then that happens. Then after like the next week, we spend really digging into like the details and the history of the Haitian Revolution. We watch a documentary that was linked on the last slide, and then the students do a couple of readings. All right, when it's time to apply our learning, a couple things happen. First of all, we do a Socratic seminar on Frederick Douglass's speech about the Haitian Revolution. I didn't know this until I started teaching about Haiti, but Frederick Douglass was the U.S. consulate to Haiti. So he has a lot of really interesting things to say about why the United States has abandoned or forgotten Haiti. And he's saying this before the U.S. went and took over Haiti in the 1900s. And his speech is actually pretty accessible. His speech is about 20 pages long. I've shortened it to about 3 pages, and you can access my edited version right here. Also, I have my students read a few different essays about why the Haitian Revolution has been forgotten, and those 4 essays are right there. And then there's a couple options. A couple years ago, I had my students use their textbook as a model and write a chapter about the Haitian Revolution. And then this year, what my students are going to do in about a week, actually, is they are going to write to the curriculum committee. My district has a curriculum committee, and we're adopting a new textbook. So my students are going to write letters to the curriculum committee, kind of advising them of what they want to see in their textbook. Our textbook, just so you know, has 71 pages on the French Revolution and 3 paragraphs on the Haitian Revolution, even though they happen at the same time. So my students often have a lot of really eloquent things to say about erasure and Eurocentrism, and a lot of them write really compellingly about those topics. All right.
And so we have created for you a list of a variety of text picture books that you can find in 5 different contents: geography, government, economics, world history, and U.S. history. Each of those are samples of the columns. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the title, A Green Place to Be, for example. That link will take you to either a Goodreads review of the book, or it'll take you to Amazon, so you can see a review of the book as well, the author, and then creation of Central Park, which is what that book is about. So it gives you a little hint of what you can find in that. And as we can see, that's what the larger Google Sheet looks like. That QR code is what will get you access to that.
For all our visual learners, Brianne also created this bookshelf. So again, these are some of the books. And if you click on a book, then it'll take you to a place where you can purchase it or review it. I use this book as well when I teach my students about the Haitian Revolution, just because there's some really, really, really great images and primary sources of like what a sugar plantation looks like. So highly recommend this book if you are teaching anything about Caribbean history. And here's where you can buy it. Oops. There we
Nice.
go.
So following world history, we have a number of different pages. You can check out geography titles that we recommend or invite you to inquire into, government titles as well. And please add to these or offer suggestions. We also have economics. And I believe the last couple we have are United States history. So for our high school teachers who are in these main content areas, hopefully these are some inspirational texts that you can launch with. And finally, at the end of this slideshow, you can access the entire slideshow by scanning this QR code or reach out to us with suggestions, revisions, or to access anything else that we've talked about within this slide presentation. But we really appreciate you being here.
Yes. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Bye. Happy teaching and reading.
Go books.